The pasta was almost done. I stirred the sauce, tasting it off the wooden spoon. Too much salt, maybe. The kitchen was warm, filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes, but my stomach felt tight. I wasn't hungry. The clock on the stove read 9:12 p.m. Too late for yoga to run over. Too early for anything else to make sense. Then the sound. Her car pulling up outside. I turned the burner off and wiped my hands on a dish towel. I listened. The way the tires crunched over the gravel. Then, silence. No garage door opening. The seconds stretched. Why didn't she pull into the driveway? The front door opened. "Hey," she called, her voice light, casual. Too casual. I turned. And then I saw her. Her hair was damp, curling at the ends. Her skin flushed, glowing. Not the usual post-workout exhaustion, but something else. A warmth. A different kind of heat. The kind that doesn't come from downward dog. Her yoga mat was slung over her shoulder, but she wasn't carrying her water bottle. She always carried her water bottle. And then the smell hit me. It was faint, but unmistakable. Alcohol. My mind went still, but my body noticed things before I did. The way my fingers curled into a fist around the dish towel. The way my breath slowed, like I was preparing for something. "You're late," I said. Just a statement. No accusation. She laughed softly, kicking off her sneakers. "Yeah, lost track of time. Katie and I stayed after class for a bit. Just talking." She walked toward me, her movements too smooth, too deliberate, like she was thinking about them. Like she was making sure they were normal. I leaned against the counter, watching. The air between us was thick with something unspoken. She pressed a quick kiss to my cheek. Cool lips, warm breath. Another contradiction. "Smells good in here," she said, heading toward the hallway. And that's when I saw it. A dark, damp spot on the back of her shorts, right at the crease where the fabric met skin. Small, but unmistakable. Something twisted inside me, sharp and ugly. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She didn't notice. Or pretended not to. She just stretched her arms over her head, letting out a soft sigh before disappearing into the bathroom. The shower turned on. I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway. My pulse was slow. Too slow. A yoga class that ran late. A drink with a friend. A wet spot on her shorts. The pieces were small. Separate. But something was wrong. I could feel it. And once you feel something is wrong, there's no going back. While she showered, I went outside. The air was thick with the smell of asphalt cooling after a hot day. The night was still. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, but otherwise, the street was silent. And her car. Still sitting on the road. That didn't sit right. I decided to park the car in the garage while she took a shower. Then I saw it. Her phone. Lying on the front passenger seat. I think she forgot it. I slid into the driver's seat. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. Locked. But I knew her passcode. She'd used it in front of me 100 times. I entered it. And just like that, everything fell apart. The messages were already open. The last conversation right there in front of me. Unknown number. Miss you already. That was incredible. Her. You have no idea how hard it was to leave. Unknown number. Next time, just tell him you're working late. Stay the night. Her. You know I want to. I stared at the screen. This wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't some one-time lapse in judgment. This was an affair. A real one. I sucked in a slow breath. My body, my mind, frozen. And then, before I could stop myself, my fist slammed into the steering wheel. The dull thud echoed in the small space, and the glove compartment popped open. At first, I didn't look. I just sat there, breathing through my teeth, jaw clenched so hard it ached. Then, something caught my eye. A sliver of fabric. I swallowed, reached forward, and pulled it out. Lace. Delicate. Hers. I exhaled through my nose, my grip tightening on the soft material. Why was her underwear here? She hadn't been wearing any when she walked into the house. I knew that now. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd been in this car with him. I turned back to her phone, my mind sharpening. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was calculating. But I didn't act. Not yet. Instead, I slid her phone into my pocket. Then, I folded the underwear in my fist, shut the glove compartment, and started the car. I pulled it into the garage like I was supposed to. Like everything was normal. Like I wasn't sitting there with physical proof in my hands. Then I walked back into the house. The shower was still running, steam curling out from the slightly ajar bathroom door. The sound of water hitting the tiles filled the hallway. Her shorts and t-shirt were crumpled on the floor. But there was no underwear. My breath hitched. She wasn't wearing any when she came home. I clenched my jaw, my fist still curled around the lace in my pocket. I exhaled. Slow. Steady. My heart beat a dull, cold thud in my chest. Then I turned away from the bathroom, walked into the living room, and dropped onto the couch. And waited. I heard the shower shut off. The door creaked. Footsteps. And she stepped out of the bathroom. The bathroom door creaked open, and she stepped out, wrapped in a towel, her hair damp and clinging to her shoulders. She hummed softly, a tune I didn't recognize, and padded toward the bedroom without looking at me. I sat on the couch, my hands resting on my knees, the lace underwear still clenched in my fist. My heart was a slow, heavy drumbeat in my chest, each thud echoing the weight of what I now knew. "Hey," I said, my voice low but steady. She paused, halfway down the hallway, and turned to look at me. Her expression was calm, almost bored. "Yeah, we need to talk." She tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "About what?" I stood, my legs feeling like they were made of stone. I held up the lace, letting it dangle between my fingers. "About this." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but then she shrugged. "Oh, that." Her tone was so casual, so dismissive, that it took everything in me not to scream. Instead, I took a step closer, my voice tight. "Yeah, that. And the messages on your phone. And the fact that you weren't at yoga tonight." She crossed her arms, leaning against the wall. "Okay, so you found out a little earlier than I expected. I was going to tell you, but I was waiting for the right time." "The right time." My voice cracked, and I clenched my fists tighter. What the hell does that even mean? She sighed, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "Look, it just happened. Sometimes feelings disappear. People change. You know how it is." "No," I said, my voice rising. "I don't know how it is. Because I didn't change. I didn't disappear. I was here. Every damn day. And you." "Me what?" she interrupted, her tone sharp now. "I'm supposed to stay in a marriage that doesn't make me happy anymore? Just because you're comfortable?" Her words hit me like a slap. I stared at her, my chest heaving, my mind racing. This wasn't just about an affair. This was about her rewriting our entire history, erasing everything we'd built together. "You think I'm comfortable?" I said, my voice trembling. "You think I've been sitting around, waiting for you to decide whether or not you still love me?" She didn't answer. She just looked at me, her expression unreadable. I took another step closer, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Who is he?" She rolled her eyes. "Does it matter?" "Yes," I snapped. "It matters. Because I want to know how long you've been lying to me. How long you've been pretending everything was fine." She pushed off the wall and walked past me, heading toward the kitchen. "It's not like I planned this, okay? It just happened. And yeah, maybe I should have told you sooner, but I didn't want to hurt you." Too late for that, I said, following her. She opened the fridge, pulled out a bottle of water, and took a long sip. When she finally looked at me again, her eyes were cold. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? Fine. I'm sorry. But it doesn't change anything. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You're sorry? That's it. That's all you've got. She shrugged. What else is there? It's over. We're over. You know it, and I know it. Her words were like a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, to break something, to make her feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But instead, I just stood there, staring at her, my mind racing. You're right, I said finally. We're over. But don't think for a second that you're walking away unscathed. She raised an eyebrow. What's that supposed to mean? I pulled out my phone and opened the banking app. It means I'm blocking the joint accounts. Canceling your yoga classes. Cutting off everything you've been using to fund your little double life. Her eyes widened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of something. Fear, maybe, or anger. You can't do that. Watch me, I said, my voice cold. What did you expect? Did you think that you would continue to spend our joint funds on your own whims? She took a step toward me, her jaw clenched. You're being ridiculous. This isn't going to solve anything. It's not about solving anything, I said. It's about making sure you don't get to walk away with everything while I'm left picking up the pieces. She stared at me for a long moment, then shook her head. Fine. Do whatever you want. But don't expect me to stick around and watch you self-destruct. But she had no idea what was coming. She turned and walked down the hallway, her towel trailing behind her. A moment later, I heard the guest room door slam shut. I stood there, my hands shaking, my mind a whirlwind of anger and pain. I wanted to break something, to scream, to do anything to make the ache in my chest go away. But instead, I just stood there, staring at the closed door, feeling more alone than I ever had in my life. Then, slowly, I turned and walked to the bedroom. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started packing. Clothes, shoes, toiletries, anything I could think of. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay here. Not tonight. As I zipped up the suitcase, I pulled out my phone and opened the leasing app for our apartment. With a few taps, I terminated the lease, effective immediately. She wouldn't be able to afford it on her own, and I didn't care. Let her figure it out. I grabbed my suitcase and walked to the front door. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, and I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. The street was quiet, the only sound the distant hum of traffic. I looked back at the house one last time, then turned and walked away. The streets were empty, the glow of streetlights casting long shadows as I drove through the night. My mind was a storm of anger, sadness, and disbelief, each emotion crashing into the next like waves in a tempest. I pulled up to my sister's house just after midnight. The lights were off, but I knew she'd be awake. She always was. I texted her before I left the house, and she'd replied with a simple, "Come over." The front door opened before I could knock. My sister, Emily, stood there in her pajamas, her hair messy and her eyes heavy with sleep. But when she saw my face, her expression softened. "Hey," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I didn't say anything. I just walked past her, dropping my suitcase by the door and collapsing onto the couch. Emily sat down beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked gently. I shook my head. Not yet. I couldn't. The words felt like shards of glass in my throat, sharp and painful. Emily didn't push. She just sat there, silent and steady, while I stared at the wall, my mind replaying the confrontation over and over again. The next morning, I woke up on Emily's couch, the sunlight streaming through the curtains. My body felt heavy, like I'd been carrying a weight I couldn't put down. Emily was in the kitchen, making coffee. The smell filled the room, warm and comforting, but it did little to ease the ache in my chest. "Morning," she said, handing me a mug. I took it, nodding my thanks, but didn't speak. She sat down across from me, her eyes searching my face. "You look like hell." "Feel like it too," I muttered, taking a sip of coffee. Emily sighed. "Do you want to talk now?" I hesitated, then nodded. Slowly, haltingly, I told her everything. The damp spot on the shorts. The unlocked phone. The messages. The underwear in the glove compartment. The way my wife had looked at me, so cold and indifferent, like I was nothing. Emily listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with every word. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, shaking her head. "I can't believe her," she said finally. "I always thought she was selfish, but this is next level." I didn't respond. I just stared into my coffee, the steam curling up and disappearing into the air. Later that afternoon, I found myself alone in Emily's guest room, my phone in my hand. I'd been staring at the unfamiliar number for what felt like hours, my thumb hovering over the call button. Finally, I pressed it. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, a man's voice answered. "Hello." I took a deep breath. "Hi. I'm David. I'm Mia's husband." There was a long pause. Then the man sighed. "Oh, yeah. I figured you'd call eventually." His tone was casual, almost bored, and it made my blood boil. But I kept my voice steady. "I just wanted to let you know that you can have her. She's all yours." The man laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Dude, don't call me anymore. I don't care about her. I'm married." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Satisfaction, yes, but also a deep, aching sadness. I'd wanted to hurt him, to make him feel even a fraction of the pain I was feeling. But instead, I'd gotten nothing. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The conversation with the lover played on a loop in my mind, his words echoing in the silence. "I don't care about her. I'm married." It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. Instead, it just made me realize how hollow everything was. My marriage, my life, my future, all of it felt like a house of cards, collapsing under the weight of betrayal. I thought about my wife, about the life we'd built together. The good times, the bad times, the moments in between. Had it all been a lie? Or had there been something real, once, before it all fell apart? I didn't know. And that was the hardest part. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in days. The pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting, but it was no longer all-consuming. I stepped outside, the cool morning air hitting my face. The sun was rising, casting a golden light over the quiet street. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done living in the past. The key turned in the lock, and the door swung open to reveal an empty apartment. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the bare walls and hardwood floors. It was small, just a one-bedroom, but it was mine. I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the empty space. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of something other than anger or sadness. It was small, tentative, but it was there. The next few days were a blur of activity. I bought furniture, a couch, a bed, a dining table. Simple, functional pieces that reflected my taste, not hers. I hung up photos of my family, my friends, my travels. I painted the walls a soft gray, a color I'd always liked but she'd vetoed. It was strange, decorating a space that was entirely my own. 4 years, every decision had been a compromise, a negotiation. Now, there was no one to consult, no one to please but myself. I started socializing again, too. I called up old friends, the ones I'd drifted away from during the marriage. We met for drinks, for dinner, for coffee. At first, it felt awkward, like I was relearning how to be myself. But slowly, the conversations grew easier, the laughter more genuine. I even picked up an old hobby, photography. I dusted off my camera and started taking pictures again, capturing the city in the golden light of early morning, the quiet moments of everyday life. It was something I'd loved once, before work and marriage and responsibilities had pushed it aside. One evening, as I was unpacking a box of books, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Hello. There was a pause, then a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. It's me. Her. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, the phone pressed to my ear, my heart pounding. I wanted to talk, she said, her voice trembling. Can we meet? Just to talk. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. Why? Another pause. I made a mistake. A huge mistake. I miss you. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You miss me? That's rich. I mean it, she said, her voice breaking. I was wrong. I was selfish. I don't know what I was thinking. I shook my head, even though she couldn't see me. You said it yourself. Sometimes feelings disappear. People change. But they can come back, she said quickly. We can start over. We can fix this. I leaned against the wall, my free hand gripping the edge of the counter. Did you know he was married? Silence. Did you? I repeated, my voice sharp. I didn't know at first, she said finally. But it doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. It's you I want. I laughed again, but there was no humor in it. You don't get to decide that. Not anymore. Please, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Just give me a chance. I closed my eyes, my chest tight. No, I said finally. You had your chance. You threw it away. I hung up before she could respond. That night, I sat on the floor of my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and half-unpacked belongings. The conversation played over and over in my mind, her words echoing in the silence. But for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt free. The betrayal had been painful, yes. It had shattered me, broken me into pieces. But as I sat there, surrounded by the remnants of my old life, I realized something. I was putting myself back together. And this time, I was doing it on my own terms. The next morning, I woke up early, the sunlight streaming through the windows. I made coffee, sat at my new dining table, and opened my laptop. I typed out an email to my lawyer, confirming the divorce filing. Then I closed the laptop and picked up my camera. I stepped outside, the cool morning air hitting my face. The city was waking up, the streets quiet but alive with possibility. I raised the camera to my eye, focusing on the way the light hit the buildings, the way the shadows stretched across the pavement. For the first time in a long time, I felt like myself.